The winter air bit through Amelia's thin coat as she lowered herself onto the park bench. Her body felt heavy, her legs tired from walking all day. She placed one hand on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the baby inside her. 7 months pregnant and nowhere to go. The thought made her chest tighten. The sky was turning gray, promising snow later. Amelia pulled her backpack closer. Everything she owned now fit in that worn bag. How quickly life could change. 2 months ago, she had an apartment, a boyfriend, and plans for the future. Now she sat alone in Jefferson Park, watching families hurry by, eager to get home to warmth and dinner. She hadn't eaten since morning, just a granola bar from the women's center downtown. They'd been kind there, but every bed was taken. Try again tomorrow, they'd said. But tomorrow felt impossibly far away. Amelia watched a little girl in a red coat chase pigeons across the path. The girl's mother called out, "Careful, honey," and the child ran back, giggling into her mother's open arms. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. Would she ever be able to give her baby that kind of life? That kind of safety? The park was emptying as daylight faded. A police officer strolled by, giving Amelia a long look. She knew that look. It meant she couldn't stay here much longer. But where could she go? She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, a basic model with a cracked screen. The battery showed 12%. No missed calls, no messages. She'd tried calling Tom 3 times yesterday, before finally accepting he wasn't going to answer. Not now. Not ever again. "It's not my problem," he'd said 2 weeks ago when she told him the baby was definitely his. "We were careful. This is on you." Then he was gone, blocked her number, moved out of his apartment. His friends claimed they didn't know where he went. After 6 months together, he'd vanished from her life like morning fog. Amelia's stomach growled. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if protesting the lack of food. "I know, little one," she whispered, rubbing circles on her belly. "I'm trying." She should have seen the eviction coming. 3 months behind on rent, working reduced hours because morning sickness had made her late too many times. Her boss had been patient at first, but patience ran out when customers complained. "We need reliability," he'd said, handing her the final paycheck. That was 5 weeks ago. The eviction notice had given her 3 days. She'd packed what she could carry and left the rest. The secondhand furniture, the small TV, the plants she'd nurtured on her windowsill. The landlord watched with folded arms as she walked out. No sympathy there. Wind rustled through the nearly bare trees. Amelia shivered and pulled her scarf tighter. She'd need to find somewhere to sleep tonight. The temperature was dropping fast. An elderly woman with silver hair paused on the path in front of her. She carried grocery bags in both hands but stopped, studying Amelia with kind eyes. "Are you all right, dear?" the woman asked, her voice gentle with concern. Amelia tried to smile, to say she was fine, but her lips trembled. The simple kindness after days of averted gazes broke something inside her. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. The woman, who introduced herself as Martha, didn't hesitate. She set down her groceries and sat beside Amelia on the bench. Up close, her face was lined with wrinkles that deepened when she smiled. "How far along are you?" Martha asked, nodding toward Amelia's belly. 7 months, Amelia replied, surprised by the directness of the question. Martha nodded thoughtfully. "My sister runs a shelter through the Harrison Foundation. It's not far from here. They might have space." Hope flickered inside Amelia, small but present. "A shelter. It's a good place, clean, safe." Martha picked up her bags. "Come with me. We can call my sister on the way." Amelia hesitated. Her mother had always warned her about strangers. But what choice did she have? The night was coming, bringing with it temperatures her thin coat couldn't fight. "Thank you," she said finally, rising slowly from the bench, her back aching from sitting too long. They walked 6 blocks to a bus stop, Martha chatting about her grandchildren, about the weather, about nothing important, just filling the silence so Amelia didn't have to. On the bus, Martha called her sister Rose, speaking in low tones while Amelia watched the city slide by through foggy windows. The Harrison Women's Shelter was housed in a renovated school building. Nothing fancy, but solid and warm. Rose met them at the entrance, a shorter version of Martha with the same kind eyes but a more businesslike manner. "We're technically full," Rose explained as she led Amelia through a hallway lined with motivational posters. but we keep an emergency cot for situations like yours. The main room held about 20 women of various ages. Some watched TV in a corner lounge area. Others sat at tables talking quietly or reading. A few looked up when Rose entered with Amelia, then returned to their activities. No one stared. No one asked questions. Dinner ended at 7, Rose said. But I can fix you a plate from the kitchen. The food was simple, vegetable soup and sandwiches. But Amelia ate every bite, seated at a small table in the staff room while Rose filled out intake forms. Any medical issues besides the pregnancy? No. Taking prenatal vitamins? Amelia looked down. Not for the past few weeks. I couldn't afford them. Rose made a note without judgment. We have a doctor who volunteers here on Tuesdays. She can check you out, get you what you need. After eating, Rose showed Amelia to a shower room with clean towels and travel-sized toiletries. The hot water felt like a miracle. Amelia stood under the spray until her skin turned pink, washing away days of worry and grime. The emergency cot was set up in a small office. Not private, but quieter than the main sleeping area. Rose provided sheets, a blanket, and a pillow that smelled of laundry detergent. It's not much, Rose apologized. It's everything, Amelia replied honestly. That night, lying on the narrow cot, Amelia stared at the ceiling. The room wasn't completely dark. A small lamp glowed in the corner for safety. She could hear faint sounds from other parts of the building. A cough, a toilet flushing, someone crying softly. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby shift and settle. We're okay for tonight, she whispered. One day at a time, right? But what about tomorrow? And the day after that? The shelter had a 2-week maximum stay policy. Rose had explained that during the intake process. 2 weeks to figure out where to go next. Amelia's mind raced through possibilities, each one leading to a dead end. Her parents were out of the question. They'd made their disappointment clear when she dropped out of community college 3 years ago. Making your own decisions means handling your own problems, her father had said. Her few friends couldn't take her in. Most lived with roommates or had tiny apartments. She'd already asked, already heard the awkward excuses. Sleep came in fits and starts, dreams of falling, of searching for something never found. She woke at dawn, her back aching from the thin mattress, but grateful to be indoors. The shelter came alive around 6:30 a.m. Women lined up for the bathroom, for coffee from a large urn in the dining area, for a chance at the 3 shower stalls. Everyone moved with the efficiency of routine, hanging up towels, making beds, preparing for the day. Rose found Amelia sitting on her cot, folding the blanket into a neat square. Sleep okay? Rose asked. Yes, thank you. A polite lie. Come have breakfast. Then we can talk about next steps. Breakfast was oatmeal, toast, and fruit. Amelia sat at a table with 2 other women who introduced themselves as Diane and Paula. Diane was older, maybe 50, with short gray hair and quick eyes. Paula looked closer to Amelia's age with a fading bruise along her jawline that she didn't explain. First night's the hardest, Diane said, stirring sugar into her coffee. Gets easier, Paula nodded. Rose helped me apply for housing assistance yesterday. There's programs for pregnant women. Takes time, though. How much time? Amelia asked. Paula and Diane exchanged glances. Months, usually, Diane said finally. Systems backed up. The hope that had carried Amelia through the night flickered. Months. The baby would be here by then. After breakfast, Rose showed Amelia to a small office with a desk and 2 chairs. On the wall hung a portrait of a serious-looking man in his 40s with the name James Harrison on a plaque beneath it. The man who funds this place, Rose explained, following Amelia's gaze. Started with this shelter 15 years ago. Now the Harrison Foundation runs 6 facilities across the city. Rose sat behind the desk, opening a folder with Amelia's name already written on it. Let's figure out where we go from here. Tell me about your work experience. For the next hour, Rose helped Amelia create a list of immediate needs and possible resources. Health insurance through a state program for pregnant women, a list of job openings that didn't require standing for long periods, housing waitlist to join. It feels impossible, Amelia admitted, looking at the daunting list. I don't even have an address to put on applications. You can use the shelter's address for now, Rose said. One step at a time. Today's goal is just to get you set up with the medical care you need. As they talked, Amelia noticed a flyer on the bulletin board behind Rose's desk. Job fair, Harrison Foundation offices next Wednesday. Rose followed her gaze and smiled. You should go. They're good about hiring people from the shelters. Temporary positions sometimes, but it's a foot in the door. For the first time in weeks, Amelia felt something like purpose. It wasn't much, just a job fair, just a temporary cot in a crowded shelter, but it was something to move toward instead of away from. I'd like that, she said. I'd like to try. Outside the office windows, snow had started to fall, dusting the world in white. Somewhere out there, her old life continued without her. But in here, with her name on a folder and a list of next steps, maybe a new life was beginning. Amelia had been at the Harrison Women's Shelter for 3 days now. The routine was becoming familiar. Breakfast at 7, chore assignments at 8. Then the day stretched ahead with various workshops and meetings with social workers. The other women were friendly enough, though everyone seemed wrapped in their own troubles. This morning, the shelter seemed different. Rose rushed about straightening picture frames and checking that everything was in order. 2 volunteers scrubbed the already clean kitchen counters. What's happening? Amelia asked Paula, who was folding blankets with practiced efficiency. Rumor is the big boss is coming, Paula said, lowering her voice. Mr. Harrison himself. He shows up sometimes, no warning. Checks how things are running. Amelia glanced at the portrait in Rose's office, visible through the open door. The stern-faced man didn't look like someone who made surprise visits to check on people. He looked like someone who sent assistants to do that sort of thing. By 10 o'clock, the shelter hummed with nervous energy. Amelia sat in the common area, leafing through a dog-eared pregnancy book she'd found on the shelter's small bookshelf. The information was 5 years out of date, but it was better than nothing. She was deep in a chapter about third trimester nutrition when the front door opened. James Harrison wasn't what Amelia expected. In his portrait, he looked imposing and corporate, all sharp angles and serious eyes. In person, he was softer somehow, tall and well-dressed in a casual sweater and slacks rather than a suit, with touches of gray at his temples. He carried himself with quiet confidence, shaking hands with staff members and asking questions in a low voice that didn't carry across the room. Amelia tried not to stare, but there was something compelling about watching this millionaire move through the shelter he funded. He wasn't performing for an audience. No photographers followed him. No assistants hovered nearby taking notes. He simply listened, nodded, and occasionally wrote something in a small notebook he pulled from his pocket. She returned to her book, determined not to gawk. The chapter recommended foods rich in iron and calcium, foods that weren't always available at the shelter's meals. She made a mental note to ask Rose if there were any prenatal supplements available. Is it a good book? The voice startled her. Amelia looked up to find James Harrison standing beside her chair, his expression curious and surprisingly gentle. It's a bit outdated, she admitted, showing him the publication date on the inside cover, but the basics probably haven't changed much. He nodded, seeming genuinely interested. May I? He asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Of course. Amelia straightened up, suddenly conscious of her wrinkled t-shirt and the way her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She hadn't expected to talk to anyone important today. I'm James Harrison, he said, extending his hand. Amelia Porter. His handshake was firm but not overpowering. How long have you been staying with us, Amelia? 3 days. Everyone's been very kind, he nodded, looking pleased. Then his eyes went to the pregnancy book in her lap. When are you due? About 2 months from now. She rested her hand on her belly, a gesture that had become automatic. Late February, first child. Yes. He didn't ask about the father, didn't probe for the sad story that had brought her to the shelter. Instead, he asked, what did you do before you came here? For work, I mean. The question surprised her. Most people wanted to know what had gone wrong in her life, not what had been going right. I was a medical receptionist at City Health Clinic for almost 2 years, she said. Before that, I worked at the campus bookstore while taking community college classes. What did you study? Nursing for a while. I had to drop out when tuition went up. She didn't mention the part about her parents cutting her off financially when she changed majors from business to nursing, against their wishes. James Harrison looked thoughtful. City Health. They were bought out by MedFirst last spring, weren't they? There were layoffs. Amelia nodded, impressed that he knew this. Yes, they kept saying no jobs would be lost in the merger, but that wasn't true. They let go of most of the front desk staff. Corporate promises, he said with a slight shake of his head, often worth less than the paper they're written on. There was something in his tone. Not bitterness exactly, but the voice of someone who had seen the pattern too many times. It made Amelia curious about him. The newspapers called him a self-made millionaire, but she realized she knew nothing about his story. "Have you looked for other receptionist positions?" he asked. "Yes, but..." She gestured to her belly. "Not many places want to hire someone who'll need maternity leave almost immediately." He nodded, understanding. "It's illegal to discriminate, but that doesn't stop them from finding other reasons." "Exactly." For someone with so much money, he seemed to understand the struggles of people without it. A shelter volunteer approached, looking apologetic for interrupting. "Mr. Harrison, Rose was hoping to show you the new computer lab before your next appointment." "Of course." He stood, then turned back to Amelia. "It was nice meeting you, Ms. Porter. I hope things improve for you soon." "Thank you," she said, expecting that to be the end of their interaction. Just a brief, polite conversation that he'd forget as soon as he moved on to the next person. She returned to her book, but found it hard to focus. Something about James Harrison bothered her. Not in a negative way, he'd been perfectly pleasant. But there had been a look in his eyes when she mentioned losing her job in the merger. Recognition, maybe, as if he knew exactly how that felt. How could a millionaire know what it felt like to be suddenly unemployed, pregnant, and homeless? The rest of the day passed slowly. Amelia attended a workshop on interview skills, met briefly with a housing counselor who had no good news to share, and helped prepare dinner in the shelter kitchen. By evening, James Harrison's visit seemed like a strange dream, a brief intersection with a world completely different from her own. After dinner, Rose found Amelia washing dishes in the industrial kitchen sink. "You don't have kitchen duty tonight," Rose reminded her. Amelia shrugged. "I don't mind. Keeps me busy." Rose leaned against the counter, studying her with an odd expression. "So, you made quite an impression on our benefactor." Amelia nearly dropped the plate she was rinsing. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Harrison asked about you. Your work history, your situation?" Rose smiled slightly. "He doesn't usually take such an interest in individual residents." "We just talked for a few minutes." "About nothing important." Rose didn't look convinced. "Well, he's asked if you'd be willing to meet with him again. Tomorrow afternoon." Amelia set down the plate carefully, her hands suddenly unsteady. "Meet with him? Why?" "He didn't say exactly. Just that he might have a proposition that could help your situation." Alarm must have shown on Amelia's face because Rose quickly added, "Not that kind of proposition. James Harrison is many things, but he's not that kind of man. He's helped many women from this shelter over the years. Jobs, education funds, housing assistance. He doesn't usually get personally involved, though. Usually works through the foundation's programs." Amelia dried her hands on a kitchen towel, trying to process this information. "What should I do?" "That's entirely up to you. The meeting would be here in my office. I'd be present the whole time." Rose's expression softened. "For what it's worth, I think you should hear what he has to say." That night, Amelia lay awake on her cot, listening to the quiet breathing of the woman sleeping across the small office. The baby kicked and rolled, active despite the late hour. "What do you think?" she whispered to her belly. "Should we hear what the rich man has to say?" She thought about the job fair poster she'd seen. Maybe he was simply going to suggest she attend, offer some basic advice. But why the private meeting for something so simple? Part of her wanted to refuse. Pride, maybe. The same stubborn streak that had made her try to manage on her own until she literally had nowhere left to go. Or perhaps it was caution. Men with power and money usually wanted something in return for their help. But Rose seemed to trust him, and Rose didn't strike her as someone easily fooled. In the morning, Amelia told Rose she would meet with Mr. Harrison. The rest of the day crawled by. She attended a prenatal yoga class offered by a volunteer, tried to read more of the outdated pregnancy book, and picked at her lunch without really tasting it. At exactly 3 o'clock, Rose came to find her. "He's here, ready?" Amelia smoothed her hair, wishing she had something nicer to wear than jeans and a borrowed maternity top. "As ready as I'll get." James Harrison stood when she entered Rose's office. Today he wore a light gray suit that probably cost more than Amelia had made in a month at her old job. He looked more like his portrait today, polished and professional. "Ms. Porter, thank you for meeting with me." He gestured to a chair across from Rose's desk. Rose took her seat behind the desk, creating a triangle between the three of them. "Mr. Harrison was just telling me about a new initiative the foundation is considering," Rose explained. Her tone carefully neutral. Harrison nodded. "We're exploring ways to provide more substantial support to individuals with high potential who find themselves in temporary difficulty." He looked directly at Amelia. "After our conversation yesterday, I did some checking. Your former supervisor at City Health spoke very highly of your work ethic and abilities." Amelia blinked in surprise. "You called Donna?" "My assistant did," he clarified. "We're always looking for talented people for the foundation's administrative team. Your medical office experience would be valuable." Hope fluttered in Amelia's chest, but uncertainty followed quickly. "But I'm 7 months pregnant, and I don't have stable housing yet." Harrison exchanged a look with Rose. "That's the other part of what I wanted to discuss. The foundation owns several properties used for transitional housing. One of them, a guest house on my personal property, is currently vacant. It's small but comfortable. You would have privacy, security, and it's close to the foundation offices." Amelia sat very still, trying to understand what he was offering. A job and a place to live? It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked finally. "You don't know me." Something flickered across his face, an old memory perhaps. "Let's just say I have personal reasons for wanting to help someone in your situation. My mother was once where you are now. Pregnant, alone, nowhere to go. Someone helped her, and that made all the difference." Rose leaned forward. "This would be a formal arrangement, Amelia. A proper employment contract with the foundation. A lease agreement for the housing. Regular check-ins with a social worker. It's not charity. It's an opportunity." Amelia looked back and forth between them, her mind racing. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to decide right now," Harrison said. "Think about it. Talk to someone you trust. The offer will remain open until the end of the week." He stood straightening his suit jacket. "I believe people deserve second chances, Ms. Porter. Sometimes life knocks us down through no fault of our own. The measure of a person is what they do when given the opportunity to stand back up." After he left, Amelia sat in Rose's office for a long time. Outside the window, the winter sun cast long shadows across the shelter's small yard. Women came and went, carrying laundry baskets, talking in small groups. "What do you think?" she finally asked Rose. Rose considered her answer carefully. "I think sometimes life offers unexpected paths. The question is whether you're brave enough to take them." 3 days had passed since James Harrison's unexpected offer. Amelia had spent those days thinking, asking questions, and wrestling with her pride. Rose had arranged for her to speak with Valerie, another woman who had received help from the Harrison Foundation 2 years earlier. "I was suspicious too," Valerie had told her over coffee in the shelter's small kitchen. "Thought there had to be a catch, but there wasn't. The foundation set me up with an apartment and a job in their call center. Now I work for an insurance company and have my own place. My daughter just started kindergarten." Still, Amelia hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger felt dangerous somehow, like stepping onto thin ice. What if it broke beneath her? On the morning she was supposed to give Harrison her answer, Amelia woke early. The baby had been active all night, as if sensing her mother's restlessness. She dressed carefully in the best outfit she had, black pants with a stretchy waistband and a blue sweater someone had donated to the shelter. The sweater was slightly too big, but it was clean and without holes. Rose was waiting in her office, a cup of tea steaming on the desk. "Have you decided?" Rose asked as Amelia lowered herself into the chair. "Yes." Amelia folded her hands over her belly. "I'm going to accept. But I have conditions." Rose raised an eyebrow. "Conditions?" "I want everything in writing. The job description, the housing agreement, everything. And I want to be able to leave at any time if it doesn't feel right." Rose smiled. "I think those are reasonable requests. Mr. Harrison actually had his lawyer prepare paperwork already." She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. "Take your time. Read everything." The documents were surprisingly straightforward. A 6-month employment contract with the Harrison Foundation as an administrative assistant, starting at a fair wage with health benefits that would begin immediately. A separate housing agreement for a 1-bedroom guest house on the Harrison estate. with a token rent of $100 per month that included utilities. Both agreements had clear terms and, just as Amelia had requested, the ability to terminate with 2 weeks' notice. At the bottom of the stack was a third document, a personal letter from James Harrison. It was handwritten on cream-colored stationery. M's Porter. If you're reading this, you're considering my offer, for which I'm grateful. I want to address what must be your primary concern, why I'm doing this. 30 years ago, my mother found herself in circumstances similar to yours, pregnant, alone, and without resources. A local businessman offered her employment and a place to live until she could get back on her feet. That man had no ulterior motives beyond paying forward a kindness someone had once shown him. That kindness changed the course of my mother's life, and by extension, mine. I wouldn't be where I am today without it. The chain of compassion shouldn't end with me. If you accept this offer, you'll be given privacy, respect, and the opportunity to build a stable future for yourself and your child. All I ask in return is that someday, when you're able, you find a way to help someone else who needs it. Respectfully, James Harrison. Amelia read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and returned it to the envelope. I'll sign the agreements, she said quietly. Rose nodded, seeming pleased but not surprised. I'll let Mr. Harrison know. He's arranged for someone to drive you to the property tomorrow morning if that works for you. So soon? Is there a reason to wait? Amelia thought about the narrow cot in the shared office, about the noise and lack of privacy, about the 2-week time limit that was quickly approaching. No, tomorrow is fine. That evening, she packed her few belongings. Paula helped her fold the clothes that had been donated during her stay at the shelter. You're lucky, Paula said, tucking a pair of socks into the corner of Amelia's backpack. Getting out of here so quick. I know. Amelia felt a twinge of guilt. Why had Harrison chosen her? There were women at the shelter who had been homeless longer, who had children already, who needed help just as much. Don't feel bad about it, Paula said, as if reading her thoughts. Your luck doesn't take anything away from the rest of us. If this works out, maybe I can help you too, Amelia said. Once I'm settled, Paula smiled. Just don't forget about us little people when you're living in your fancy guest house. The next morning, a black car with tinted windows arrived at the shelter. The driver, an older man who introduced himself simply as George, loaded Amelia's backpack into the trunk and held the door open for her with old-fashioned courtesy. As the shelter disappeared from view, Amelia felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She was leaving the safety of a known situation, however imperfect, for something entirely new. The drive took them out of the city center, through progressively more affluent neighborhoods, and finally into an area where houses sat on large wooded lots. They turned into a long driveway marked by tasteful stone pillars, no ostentatious gate or sign announcing whose property it was. Amelia caught glimpses of a large house through the trees, stone and glass, modern but somehow timeless. The car bypassed the main house, following a curved drive that led to a smaller structure about 100 yards away. The guest house was built in the same style as the main house, but on a much more modest scale. George carried her backpack to the door, handed her a set of keys, and with a small bow, returned to the car. Mr. Harrison said to tell you he'll send his assistant to bring you to the office tomorrow at 9, he said through the car window. Take today to settle in, and then she was alone. The guest house was nothing like Amelia had imagined. She had pictured something fancy and intimidating, all sleek surfaces and expensive furnishings that would make her afraid to touch anything. Instead, it was surprisingly comfortable. The living area had a small sofa and armchair arranged around a simple coffee table. The kitchen was compact but well-equipped, with a 2-person table by a window overlooking a garden. A short hallway led to a bathroom and a bedroom with a queen-sized bed that looked like heaven after weeks on a shelter cot. What struck her most was the quiet. No chattering voices, no sounds of multiple people sharing a small space, just the occasional bird call from outside and the soft hum of the heating system. Amelia set her backpack on the bed and slowly walked through the rooms again, running her fingers along countertops, opening cabinets. The refrigerator was stocked with basics: milk, eggs, bread, fruit, vegetables. The pantry held pasta, rice, canned goods. Someone had thought about what she might need. On the coffee table was a welcome basket with prenatal vitamins, herbal tea, and a new copy of the pregnancy book she'd been reading at the shelter. The latest edition, not the outdated one, it was overwhelming. Amelia sank onto the sofa, suddenly tearful. After weeks of just trying to survive each day, the kindness represented by that simple basket broke something open inside her. "We're okay," she whispered to her baby. "At least for now, we're okay." She spent the rest of the day exploring her new temporary home, washing the donated clothes and hanging them in the closet, and simply sitting by the window, watching birds at a feeder in the garden. By evening, she felt almost settled, though the quiet still startled her occasionally. As darkness fell, soft landscape lighting illuminated the path from the guest house to the main house. Amelia could see lights on in some of the windows there, but no movement inside. James Harrison remained a mystery, present through his generosity but physically distant. She slept better that night than she had in months, waking only when the baby's kicks became insistent around dawn. The shower had perfect water pressure, and for the first time in weeks she didn't have to rush or worry about using too much hot water. At precisely 8:45 the next morning, a knock came at the door. A woman in her 50s with a practical bob and sensible shoes stood on the porch. "Good morning. I'm Nancy Wilson, Mr. Harrison's assistant," she said briskly. "Ready for your first day?" The Harrison Foundation occupied the top floor of a downtown office building. The elevator opened directly into a reception area with the foundation's logo, a simple H with outstretched arms, on the wall behind the front desk. Nancy led Amelia through a maze of cubicles and offices to a small but pleasant workspace near a bank of windows. The desk was equipped with a new computer, phone, and basic supplies. "This will be your station," Nancy explained. "You'll be supporting our programs division, mostly data entry and correspondence to start, but there's room for growth if you show aptitude." She introduced Amelia to the team, 8 people who managed the foundation's various initiatives. Everyone was polite, though Amelia caught a few curious glances. She wondered if they knew about her situation, about the unusual way she'd been hired. The morning passed in a blur of orientation sessions, paperwork, and introductions. By lunchtime, Amelia's head was spinning with new information. Nancy showed her to a small break room where several employees were eating. "Join us," called a friendly woman who had introduced herself earlier as Brenda from accounting. First day is always the hardest. Conversation flowed easily around her as she ate the sandwich Nancy had thoughtfully provided. No one asked personal questions or treated her differently. It was refreshing after weeks of being identified primarily by her problems. After lunch, Nancy led her to a large corner office. "Mr. Harrison would like to check in with you." James Harrison stood as they entered, coming around his desk to shake Amelia's hand. "How was your first morning, Ms. Porter?" "Good. Everyone's been very helpful." He nodded, seeming pleased. "And the guest house? Everything you need?" "Yes, it's perfect. Thank you." Nancy excused herself, leaving them alone. Harrison gestured to a chair, returning to his seat behind the desk. "I want to be clear about something," he said once they were both seated. "Your employment here is not dependent on your housing arrangement. They're separate agreements. Your job performance will be evaluated just like any other employees. I don't want you to feel obligated or indebted." Amelia appreciated his directness. "I understand. I intend to earn my place here." "I believe you will." He studied her for a moment. "I've assigned Nancy as your mentor. She's been with the foundation since the beginning. You couldn't ask for a better guide." There was something he wasn't saying, Amelia sensed. Something behind his careful words. "Can I ask you a question?" she said suddenly. He looked surprised but nodded. "Your mother, the one you mentioned in your letter. What happened to her, to you?" A shadow crossed his face, old pain briefly visible. "She worked hard. Raised me alone. Made sure I got an education. She died 10 years ago, cancer." He paused. "She never forgot the help she received when she needed it most. It shaped her life's philosophy and mine. And the man who helped her became a mentor to me. Gave me my first real job." A slight smile touched his lips. "My mother always said there are no self-made people. We're all products of the hands that lift us when we fall." Amelia thought about that as she returned to her desk for the afternoon training sessions. No self-made people. Just those who remembered the hands that lifted them, and those who forgot. The weeks passed in a steady rhythm as January turned to February. Amelia settled into her job at the Harrison Foundation, gradually mastering the databases and filing systems. Her co-workers were friendly but professional, inviting her to lunch occasionally but respecting her privacy. No one asked how she'd come to work there or mentioned her growing belly, though Nancy quietly adjusted her schedule to allow for more frequent breaks and doctor appointments. The guest house became a true home. Amelia found herself talking to the baby as she moved through the rooms, describing what she was doing, sharing her thoughts. "This is where we'll have breakfast," she'd say, standing in the kitchen, "and we'll sit by this window and watch the birds." In the bedroom, she'd carefully fold tiny clothes donated by Foundation employees, arranging them in the drawers of a small dresser that had appeared one day. James Harrison remained a distant figure, nodding to her in the hallways at work, but rarely engaging in conversation. Sometimes Amelia would see lights on in the main house as she returned home in the evening, but there were never visitors, never any sign of family. She wondered about his life but didn't feel it was her place to ask. At the beginning of her 8th month, Nancy helped her set up a nursery corner in the bedroom. They pushed the dresser against one wall and added a second-hand crib with a new mattress. A rocking chair appeared next to it. "From the attic of the main house," Nancy explained. "Mr. Harrison thought you might need it." The gesture touched Amelia deeply. That night, she sat in the chair for the first time, its smooth wooden arms cool beneath her palms. She rocked gently, watching moonlight filter through the curtains, and found herself telling the baby about the past few months, about hitting rock bottom in the park, about Martha and Rose, about the strange path that had led them here. "Sometimes help comes from places you never expected," she whispered, stroking her belly. "And sometimes the hardest part is being brave enough to accept it." The next day at work, Amelia was filing reports when Brenda from accounting stopped by her desk. "A few of us are putting together a small baby shower for you," Brenda said. "Nothing fancy. Just cake and some gifts in the break room next Friday. If that's okay with you?" Amelia was surprised. She'd been friendly with her co-workers but hadn't expected this kind of personal gesture. "That's very thoughtful. Thank you. Nancy mentioned you're due in a few weeks. First babies are scary enough without having to worry about having everything you need." That night, Amelia added the baby shower to her calendar and realized with a start that her due date was only 3 weeks away. She'd been so focused on adjusting to her new life that the reality of impending motherhood had temporarily receded. Soon there would be an actual baby, her baby, and everything would change again. The thought both terrified and excited her. The safe, predictable routine she'd established would be upended, but she was in a far better position now than she had been months ago, sitting alone on that park bench with nowhere to go. As she cooked dinner, Amelia found herself thinking about her parents. She hadn't spoken to them in over a year, not since that final argument when her father had made it clear that dropping out of college meant she was on her own. They didn't even know about the baby. On impulse, Amelia picked up her phone and dialed her mother's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Her mother's familiar voice reciting the generic greeting made Amelia's throat tighten. "Mom, it's me," she said after the beep. I wanted to let you know I'm okay. I'm going to have a baby soon. Your grandchild. A girl, I think, though they're not completely sure." She paused, unsure what else to say. "I have a job now. And a place to live. I'm doing all right. I thought you should know." She hung up, not expecting a call back but feeling better for having reached out. Whatever happened or didn't happen with her parents, she had taken the first step. The baby shower the following Friday was simple but heartfelt. The break room was decorated with a few pink and blue streamers, and a cake with "Welcome Baby Porter" written in blue icing sat on the table. About a dozen co-workers had gathered, including Nancy and, to Amelia's surprise, James Harrison. He stood somewhat awkwardly at the edge of the group, a wrapped package tucked under his arm. When it came time for gifts, he handed it to her with a small smile. "Just something practical," he said quietly. Inside the box was a top-of-the-line baby monitor with a video screen and temperature sensor. It was far nicer than anything Amelia could have afforded, but not so extravagant as to be uncomfortable. The card simply read, "For peace of mind." "Joach, thank you," she said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. He nodded, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention. Nancy helped pick it out. I wouldn't have known where to start. The other gifts were equally practical. Onesies, bottles, diapers, a baby bathtub, a soft blanket handmade by Brenda. By the end, Amelia was fighting back tears, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who had been strangers just weeks ago. "I don't know what to say," she admitted as they finished the cake. "Thank you all so much." "That's what community is for," Nancy said firmly. "To step in when needed." After the shower, James Harrison walked with Amelia to the elevator. They rode down in companionable silence, but as they reached the lobby, he cleared his throat. "I wanted to let you know that I've arranged for additional help after the baby comes," he said. "A night nurse for the first few weeks and a cleaning service twice a week. The paperwork is on your desk." Amelia started to protest, but he held up a hand. "It's not charity. It's practical. We want you back at work when you're ready, and that will be easier if you're not completely exhausted from doing everything alone." She considered his words. "Thank you. That makes sense." He nodded, looking relieved that she hadn't argued. "Good, and congratulations, Miss Porter. I think you're going to be an excellent mother." The sincerity in his voice stayed with her all the way home. That weekend, Amelia organized the baby gifts and finished preparing the nursery corner. The due date was only 2 weeks away now, though the doctor had warned her that first babies often came late. Still, she wanted to be ready. As she was folding tiny socks, her phone rang. The screen showed a number she hadn't seen in over a year. Her mother. Amelia's heart pounded as she answered. "Hello?" "Amelia." Her mother's voice was stiff, formal. "I got your message. Yes, I thought you should know." A long silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, her mother sighed. "Your father doesn't know I'm calling. He's still very upset about your choices. And you?" Another pause. "I don't approve of how you've handled things, but I'd like to know my grandchild." It wasn't the warm reconciliation Amelia might have hoped for, but it was something, a crack in the wall that had been built between them. "I'd like that too," she said softly. They talked for a few minutes more, exchanging basic information. Amelia was careful about how much she shared, not mentioning her period of homelessness or the shelter. She simply said she had a good job now and a safe place to live. Her mother didn't press for details. "I'll call after the baby comes," her mother said as they were ending the call. "Take care of yourself, Amelia." "You too, Mom." It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning. The next week passed in a blur of final preparations and increasing discomfort. Amelia's back ached constantly, and sleeping became nearly impossible as the baby seemed determined to practice gymnastics all night long. Nancy insisted she work from home the last few days before her due date, sending files via email and checking in by phone. 3 days before her official due date, Amelia woke at dawn with a strange sensation. A dull pain wrapped around her lower back, then faded. She lay still, waiting. 20 minutes later, it happened again. "Is this it?" she whispered to her belly. "Are you ready to meet me?" By mid-morning, there was no doubt. The contractions were coming regularly, gradually increasing in intensity. Amelia called her doctor, who advised her to stay home until the contractions were 5 minutes apart. She tried to remain calm, packing the hospital bag she'd prepared and timing contractions with an app on her phone. But as the hours passed and the pain intensified, she began to feel afraid. This was really happening and she was alone. Just after noon, she called Nancy. "My contractions are about 7 minutes apart," she explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "The doctor says I don't need to go to the hospital yet. But I'll be there in 20 minutes, Nancy said without hesitation. True to her word, Nancy arrived exactly 20 minutes later. Practical as always, with a cooler of ice chips and a calm demeanor that immediately made Amelia feel better. "First babies usually take their time," Nancy said, helping Amelia walk around the living room as another contraction built. "We'll know when it's time to go." By late afternoon, the contractions were 5 minutes apart and intense enough that Amelia couldn't talk through them. Nancy helped her to the car and drove to the hospital, where a room was waiting. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of pain, encouraging voices and the steady beep of monitors. Nancy stayed, her calm presence an anchor in the storm of labor. When things became particularly difficult, she held Amelia's hand and reminded her to breathe, to focus, to find her strength. "You're not alone," Nancy said firmly when Amelia cried that she couldn't do it. "You've never been alone, not really. And you won't be alone for this. Just after midnight, with a final, tremendous effort, Amelia's daughter entered the world, red-faced, squalling, and perfect. The doctor placed the tiny, warm body on Amelia's chest, and everything else fell away. The pain, the fear, the long journey that had brought her here. None of it mattered in that moment. "Hello, Hope," Amelia whispered, the name she'd chosen weeks ago suddenly feeling exactly right. "I'm your mom." In the corner of the room, Nancy wiped tears from her eyes and stepped out to make a call. Minutes later, she returned with a small, elegant bouquet of pink roses. "From Mr. Harrison," she explained, setting them on the bedside table. "He says congratulations and take all the time you need. Everything is taken care of." Amelia looked down at her daughter's face, peaceful now as she slept against her mother's heart. From a park bench with nowhere to go to this moment of new beginnings, the journey had been unexpected in every way. "We're going to be okay," she told Hope softly. "Better than okay. We're going to be amazing." 3 years had passed since that cold winter day when Amelia sat alone on a park bench with nowhere to go. Now, on a bright spring morning, she stood in front of a mirror adjusting the collar of her blazer. The reflection showed a different woman than the desperate, frightened person she had once been. Today's Amelia stood taller, her eyes clear and confident, her smile genuine. "Mama, hurry," called a small voice from the living room. "We'll be late." "Coming, sweetie," Amelia replied, giving her collar one final adjustment. Hope sat on the sofa, her legs swinging above the floor, tiny shoes gleaming. At 3 years old, she was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, with dark curls that bounced when she moved and a laugh that could brighten the darkest day. She wore a special dress for the occasion, blue with white flowers, and had insisted on wearing the sparkly hair clips Brenda from accounting had given her for her birthday. "Remember what today is?" Amelia asked, helping Hope with her light jacket. Hope nodded solemnly. "The special building is opening. The one with your name on it." "That's right. And what do we do at special events?" Hope's face scrunched in concentration. "We say thank you to people. And we stand up straight. And we don't wriggle too much." "Perfect." Amelia kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the sweet shampoo smell. "Let's go make some history." Outside, the day was perfect. Clear blue skies and just enough breeze to rustle the new leaves. Nancy waited beside her car, elegant as always in a gray suit, her hair now fully silver but still in the same practical bob. "The guests of honor," Nancy said with a warm smile. "Ready for the big day?" Hope ran to give Nancy a hug, chattering about her special dress and the ribbon cutting they had practiced yesterday. Nancy listened with the patient attention she always showed the child, nodding seriously at all the right moments. The drive into the city took 30 minutes, during which Hope pointed out every dog, interesting cloud and colorful building they passed. Amelia watched her daughter's excitement with a full heart. Sometimes it still amazed her that they had made it here, not just surviving but thriving. The new Porter Harrison Family Center stood on what had once been an abandoned lot in a struggling neighborhood. Now the area was transforming, with small businesses opening nearby and old buildings being renovated. The center itself was modern but welcoming. Large windows, a play area visible from the street, and a sign bearing both Amelia's and James Harrison's names. A small crowd had already gathered for the opening ceremony. Foundation staff, community members, city officials, reporters with cameras and notepads. Amelia recognized many faces, co-workers who had become friends, families who had participated in the pilot program, volunteers who had given countless hours. James Harrison stood near the entrance talking with the mayor. At 61, he had more gray in his hair than when Amelia first met him, but he carried himself with the same quiet dignity. When he spotted Amelia and Hope approaching, he excused himself and came to greet them. "There she is," he said, kneeling to Hope's level. "The most important guest at our party." Hope grinned, showing the gap where her first baby tooth had recently fallen out. "I practiced cutting the ribbon 100 times, she informed him seriously. "Then I'm sure you'll do it perfectly." He straightened, turning to Amelia. "Nervous?" "A little," she admitted. "It's a big moment. You've earned it." His eyes conveyed the pride he rarely expressed in words. "This center exists because of your vision, your persistence." It was true, though Amelia still found it hard to take full credit. The idea had begun during her maternity leave, when she'd had time to reflect on her own journey and the gaps in the support system for families in crisis. She'd started by making notes, then drafting a proposal, then presenting it to James during her first week back at work. "We help people, but in fragments," she had explained. "Housing here, job training there, childcare somewhere else. What if we brought it all under one roof, a true family center?" To her surprise, James had not only listened but had immediately grasped the potential. Within weeks, a task force had been formed. Amelia was appointed to lead it, her role at the foundation shifting from administrative assistant to program developer. The next 2 years had been a whirlwind of planning meetings, grant applications, and community forums. Amelia had thrown herself into the work, drawing on her own experience to identify what families truly needed. James had provided unwavering support, offering guidance when asked but trusting her to lead the project. Now, 3 years after Hope's birth, the Porter Harrison Family Center was ready to open its doors. The building contained everything Amelia had envisioned: a child care center, job training classrooms, housing assistance offices, medical and mental health services, and a community kitchen. A one-stop resource for families in transition. "It's time," Nancy said, gently interrupting Amelia's thoughts. "They're ready for you." The ceremony began with speeches from the mayor and a city council member. Then James Harrison stepped to the microphone. He spoke briefly about the foundation's mission and the importance of innovation in addressing community needs. "But today isn't about me," he concluded. "It's about a woman who knows firsthand what it means to need help, and who has dedicated herself to improving how that help is provided. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Porter Harrison Family Center, Amelia Porter." The applause was warm as Amelia took the podium. She had prepared for this moment, rehearsing her speech late into the night, but now the carefully written words felt insufficient. "3 years ago," she began, "I sat on a park bench not far from here. I was 7 months pregnant, recently homeless and completely alone. I had nowhere to go." The crowd grew quiet, drawn in by the personal story they hadn't expected. "That day, a stranger stopped to help me. She brought me to a shelter run by the Harrison Foundation, and there my life changed course. Not because someone gave me charity, but because someone saw my potential when I couldn't see it myself." Amelia glanced at James, who nodded slightly in encouragement. "What makes a family isn't always blood," she continued. "Sometimes it's built through understanding, respect, and believing in someone when they've stopped believing in themselves. That's what this center represents. Not just services, but true support. Not just help, but hope." She went on to explain the center's programs, the integrated approach, the commitment to dignity and self-determination. As she spoke, she could see heads nodding, people leaning forward, engaged with the vision she described. "We'll measure our success not by how many people we serve, but by how many no longer need our services because they've found stability and independence. Because ultimately that's what we all want. Not handouts, but the opportunity to stand on our own." When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Hope, who had been sitting quietly with Nancy, ran to her mother's side. Together, with James Harrison, they approached the ribbon stretched across the center's entrance. "Ready?" Amelia asked her daughter, handing her the ceremonial scissors. Hope nodded solemnly, her small face a picture of concentration as she positioned the scissors and cut. The ribbon fluttered to the ground and cheers erupted from the crowd. Inside, the celebration continued with tours, refreshments, and music. Amelia moved through the rooms, explaining features, introducing staff, answering questions from reporters. Hope stayed close, occasionally hiding behind her mother's legs when strangers approached, but otherwise soaking in the excitement. Late in the afternoon, as the event was winding down, Amelia found a quiet moment with James in what would be her new office. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything," he shook his head. "No thanks needed. You did the hard work. I just provided the resources." "It was more than that," Amelia insisted. "You took a chance on me when I was at my lowest. You saw something worth investing in." "I recognize something familiar," he admitted. "The same determination my mother had. The same potential." They stood in comfortable silence, looking out the window at the neighborhood the center would serve. People walked by, mothers with strollers, teenagers in groups, elderly couples moving slowly but steadily, each with their own story, their own struggles and dreams. "I received a call yesterday," James said after a moment, "from Martha Jenkins. The name took Amelia a moment to place. The woman who found me in the park? Who brought me to the shelter? James nodded. She's been volunteering at a food bank since retiring. Says she keeps finding pregnant women who need more help than a meal. Wanted to know if the new center might have resources for them. Amelia smiled. The circle continues. Indeed it does. He turned from the window. You know, when I first offered you the job in the guest house, I thought I was the one extending help. I never imagined where it would lead. That's how it works, isn't it? Amelia said softly. We think we're changing one life, but really we're changing the future. Just then, Hope came running into the office, her special dress now slightly rumpled, one hair clip hanging precariously. Mama, a lady is here from the shelter. The one where I was born. Rose appeared in the doorway behind Hope, older now but still with the same kind, practical manner. Sorry to interrupt. Some of the current residents wanted to see the new center. I hope that's okay. More than okay, Amelia said warmly. In fact, Hope and I will give them the tour ourselves. She looked at her daughter. Remember what I told you about the park bench and the kind lady who helped me? Hope nodded. And now we help other people. Because that's what makes the world better. Exactly right, James said, his voice unusually soft. That's precisely what makes the world better. As they walked out to meet the shelter residents, Amelia felt the weight of the journey that had brought her here, from desperation to purpose, from isolation to community. The path hadn't been straight or easy, but looking back, she wouldn't change a single step. Because sometimes, she had learned, the darkest moments were just the beginning of the brightest chapters. And sometimes having nowhere to go meant you were about to find exactly where you belonged.